That's fine. Welcome to Fan Take,
the series where we'll be breaking down different fandoms and their impact on the advertising industry. I'm Mackenzie. I'm the media department manager at the agency.
And I'm Ginny, an operations manager. And joining us today, we have two of the biggest Marvel fans and even bigger Spider-Man fans in the office, Haley and Taryn.
Woo! Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Haley. I am a public relations major. I'm currently the lead copywriter, but I'm also transitioning into the creative operations manager role. I am a Harry Styles fan, but I'm also a One Direction fan, a Beyonce fan, a Taylor Swift fan, a Ted Lasso fan, but most importantly today, I am a Marvel fan.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, I'm Taryn and Aebli. I'm a third-year advertising major. I'm currently a videographer, project manager, account supervisor, among other things, but I'm currently transitioning into the communication supervisor role. And some of my fandoms include Harry Styles, One Direction, Joshua Bassett, Star Wars, Ted Lasso, but most importantly, Marvel and especially Spider-Man.
All right, so I got into Marvel pretty late, I think, compared to most people. I didn't watch any of the movies until like 2020 when we all got sent home for COVID. And so I watched them with my brother and my mom, like from start to finish, all of the movies. And that was really cool. But I'm kind of curious how you guys got into Marvel. Were you there from the start, or did you get kind of late into it like I did?
Haley, I think you probably went before. You probably started before I did. But for me, my family wanted to do like a movie night one night, and we just had like dinner and watched the Avengers, the first one. That was the first time I've ever seen any Marvel movie, and I just instantly like fell in love. Like, it was the graphics, the characters, the humor, the special effects. Like, I just kind of fell in love with it all, and genuinely like that moment was when I like decided I wanted to go into the movie industry, and that's when I wanted to like go into entertainment, but also just like fell in love with Marvel. And then from then I watched every single movie before Avengers, and then have been to almost every single premiere after that, which is really fun. Yeah, I think that's like my story, I think. Do you want to go?
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, I think mine started a little bit before yours, just because my brother was a Marvel fan, so when Iron Man came out, it was a whole family affair. Like, we had to go because he wanted to go. And so I was like, yeah, like, I'll check it out. And I liked it. I enjoyed it. Like, I was a kid. It was a superhero movie. It was fun. But then my brother started explaining stuff about Marvel to me because I only knew, like, pop culture references and stuff. And it was just nice hearing him, like, explain that hobby to me. And then we watched the Avengers as a family. And then it kind of became a thing where, like, every time a Marvel movie came out, like, we were there. Thursday night, like, it didn't matter if it was like 8 o'clock or midnight, like, we were there for that premiere. And like, my brother would explain to my mom, like, whenever a trailer would drop, like, okay, here's what's probably gonna happen, here are the characters that you're probably gonna see and stuff, and like, we would get really excited. And then before I knew it, like, my friends were into Marvel, and it was just like a big thing, and I was like really a Marvel fan.
I love that. My brother's the same way. Like, he was a huge Marvel fan, and I didn't really know much about it. And also, for some reason, whenever my brother likes something, I'm like, oh, I can't like that. I don't know why I'm like that. But I eventually did get into it, and so now we have this thing where we see the movies together, and he'll show me. I'll normally watch the trailers and kind of prepare for it before seeing the movie, but he goes like really in depth into it. He's like, this is the theory that people have, like, we think this character is going to show up, and it's so fun, like, having that little like bond with him about that. So it's kind of funny that you guys have like a similar experience. Mm-hmm. How did you get into it, Ginny?
That's a good question. The first movie I can remember like going to see in theaters was the first Avengers movie. But then like the first movie I watched was Captain America, the First Avenger, not to be confused with Avengers. But so like pretty early on, and then I started going, my family would go. My brother was a bigger fan, but what's funny is like now me and my sister are bigger fans than my brother is. Like, I don't even know what the last like movie he saw was. So we've kind of like taken the reign and now it's like our thing. And then my sister really likes the TV shows, so I probably am more likely to see a show on see a movie the premiere night, like the Thursday night, mostly because you guys all like to go see it. We all go see them together, but she'll like watch the shows before I do. So that's really it. But yeah, I'm a Spider-Man girl as well. I love Bucky Barnes, but I think like my favorite like superhero is Spider-Man. So I'm with you on that one. You too, right? You're Spider-Man.
Oh yeah.
I feel like Spider-Man probably is my favorite like Avenger. I don't know. Honestly, I don't have like that strong of opinions on Marvel characters, but Spider-Man is just so lovable, and he has such a heart, and he really cares about people. So how can you not love him?
But which Spider-Man?
Spider-Man. See, this is controversial, and we could have a whole 30-minute podcast on my take on this, but we won't do that. But my favorite is obviously Spider-Man, but Tom Holland's specifically. I've always loved Spider-Man. Like, I've watched like Tobey's movies, and I liked it, but something about Tom Holland and the way that this Spider-Man was written. I mean, Stan Lee said that Tom Holland Spider-Man was what he always imagined it to be, especially because he wrote it to be a high schooler, and that's what Tom Holland portrayed. So you really got to see like what it was supposed to be, and I think the way that Tom Holland plays the nerdiness along with the kind of cockiness when he puts on the suit is like perfect. Like, I think that's like exactly what it is. But I'm also like a big Captain America fan and stuff. I love Captain America. But Spider-Man has my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would also agree. Spider-Man, like, he's the best. Like, he'll always be my favorite. And part of that's because whenever my brother was like explaining like the MCU stuff, it was also talking about like the stuff with Sony and how they had the rights to Spider-Man and like how much people wanted Spider-Man in the MCU, but he couldn't join until like when he did in Civil War. So I was waiting so long to see him like in the MCU world, and when they brought Tom Holland on, he was like perfect. Like, there was so much that he had to live up to, and he exceeded expectations in my opinion. Like, he is Spider-Man, so he's so perfect for it. But I also love Black Panther, of course. Chadwick Boseman did phenomenal Black Panther. Yeah, and Captain America. I will watch all the Captain America movies on repeat. Like, there is something about them. Civil War. Yeah.
Civil War I have seen multiple times.
Yeah, I'm definitely Captain America. Like, when I first started, was like the character that I loved, and I probably like, if I'm being honest, he's probably like, if I'm like, I need to watch a movie, it's going to be a Captain America movie, like you're saying. But I think Spider-Man, because maybe it's like my age and I'm younger and he seems a little bit more relatable. But I actually have kind of a funny, my Instagram handle, you can like go back and see all your different like Instagram names. I like Tom Holland the best, but my Instagram name used to be like Miss Garfield.
I remember you showing us
from like when Andrew Garfield's like Spider-Man movies came out. Like, that would have been my first introduction. Yeah. So I have a special place in my heart for Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man.
Gotta love Andrew Garfield.
You have to.
I can do like a brief synopsis of my opinion, because I do agree. I love Andrew's Spider-Man, but his Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And so like that's kind of my thing, where I love Tobey's Peter Parker. I don't really love his Spider-Man, because Spider-Man's supposed to be more like confident and kind of cocky, and I don't really think Tobey does that to the extent. But then Andrew is so good at playing that, but he doesn't really have the best Peter Parker. He almost like is too cocky in the Peter Parker mode, and that's why I think Tom Holland's the best Spider-Man, because he has the best combination of both. He can be the kind of nerdiness, awkward, shy, anxiety-driven character, but he can also be that kind of cockiness when he puts on the suit.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
So there's been a lot of like really iconic Marvel moments. I can say for myself, like my favorite one is that in Endgame, when the portals happen, it's playing that beautiful, like slower version of the Avengers theme song, and Falcon says, "On your left," and it's like a whole full circle moment from the Winter Soldier movie. But do you guys have like a moment like that from the movies that stick out to you?
I think a lot of my favorite like Marvel moments are some of the ones that are also like the big fan moments. So portals and Endgame, that's a huge one. And also like when Spider-Man like walks through in the portal in Ned's house, like that's obviously a big one in No Way Home. But there are also some like smaller ones that are my favorites, like Civil War, seeing Black Panther for the first time. That was huge because my brother talked about that a lot. And then seeing Spider-Man for the first time in Civil War, like I was waiting for that for so long. And I actually think my favorite moment in Endgame is having Captain America pick up Thor's hammer. Because that was one of the things that wasn't spoiled for me.
That?
I know.
Oh, God.
It was so good. I had Iron Man's fate spoiled for me in Endgame, and I was really sad about that. But not having Captain America picking up Thor's hammer spoiled for me, like, that made up for it, to be honest. Like, that was almost like an equally big moment, if not bigger, for me.
That was such a huge, like, the theater reactions that you can, like, find online are insane of just, like, everyone, like,
Well, especially because in Ultron, you saw the hammer kind of shake when they were all like, oh, you can pick it up. And you saw it shake, and you saw, like, Thor go, like, what the heck? So it was, like, another, like, full circle moment like that. Oh, my God, I forgot about that scene. That scene, I was screaming. That was so good. I think my favorite... I have two. One of them was obviously Spider-Man. But I think my favorite was, like, very early on in, like, my Marvel fanatics, I guess. Me and my friend in, like, middle school went and saw Age of Ultron, the premiere. And so I think this was, like, one of my first premieres. And, like, we all know, like, the Age of Ultron movie is, like, not as up to par as the other Avengers, but... the end credit scene, in my opinion, is one of the best end credit scenes in the entire MCU. And if you don't remember, you see kind of like a door open, and then you see Thanos come in with the Infinity Gauntlet right there, and you see him pick it up, and he goes, fine, I'll do it myself. And I was freaking out because at this point, like, we knew who Guardians of the Galaxy were, and the entire fandom had a better understanding of who Thanos was from Guardians. So at this point, I remember, like, literally screaming in the theater, and we were, like, middle school, right? So, like, afterwards I was physically jumping around in the parking lot and being like, oh my God, that means Guardians and the Avengers are gonna come together. And, like, you predicted it, and you, like, saw it, like, way before that was even, like, a thing. And so I think that's, like, also one of my favorite things about Marvel is you kind of get to make those connections on your own, where it's like confirmed, but, like, is it really? Right, and so when you see them come to life, it's like, oh my God, I predicted that. Like, I'm so smart. Like, it's so fun.
I have even more. I just thought of another, like, really awesome moment. It's during the Winter Soldier when Bucky catches the shield.
Oh.
It's, like, the most, like, whoa, because that's the first time you, like, realize, like, oh shoot, that's Bucky, you know? And so, like, that was, like, really cool. And obviously the Hydra reveal in that movie. That whole movie in and of itself is a favorite moment. But also the, like, end credit scene first, the first Spider-Man movie, where it was just Captain America going, patience. And he was like, they've been poking fun at how everyone waits until the end of the movies. To me, that's actually my favorite end credit scene. But also just in general, any callback to an old movie. Like, there's so many good times in Endgame where they, like, called back to, like, an original, like, I am Iron Man before the snap, or Bucky saying bye to Cap, and, like, the I'm with you to the end of line. All of that stuff, like, the callbacks I really love, and I just feel like they stand out to fans.
Yeah, I do wish that, like, since I watched pretty much not all the movies, but a lot of the movies, like, at home much later after they came out, I wish I could have experienced things like that in the theater, because that's, like, what's so fun about Marvel movies is that the fans get so excited in the theaters, and everyone's kind of, like, having this moment together, and they can kind of make predictions together.
Yeah.
I did watch No Way Home in theaters, and that was probably the first big Marvel movie that I saw in theaters with my brother. And he kind of, like, said before we watched it, like, maybe this will happen. And I remember everyone was, like, screaming, like, oh my God, no way.
I was one of those people, yes. That was my other moment. I think that's, like, the pinnacle of, like, the Marvel experience, I feel like, is, like, No Way Home. Whenever there was, like, Twitter was going crazy, like, the year before No Way Home, because it was, like, all the theories of Andrew and Tobey being together, and then, like, Jamie Foxx being casted as Electro or something again, and everyone was like, is this, like, actually gonna happen? But we all thought it was too crazy. Like, there's no way. Like, Tobey was, like, old. Like, nobody thought that Tobey was gonna put on a suit again. But then whenever you saw, I think the villains were the first sign in No Way Home that, like, shit was
really
if you're gonna bring the villains,
I think villains was the first sign that, like, things were gonna come together. And then whenever you saw it, the energy in that theater when people were standing up and screaming, I think I screamed and cried at the same time at one point. Like, it was crazy, and seeing all of them together, and then you got to see them all interact, and like, I wrote a whole paper on this, but, like, Spider-Man No Way Home was a movie for the fans, and all of the fan predictions came true, and some people think that makes it less than a Marvel movie, and I thought, honestly, it's like one of the things that Marvel needed was just like a movie that was what fans actually wanted, and that they did it so perfectly.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. I actually feel like it's interesting seeing how other people thought about No Way Home leading up to it, because me and my brother were like, oh, they're definitely going to be in it.
Yeah.
Like, it was not, like, a question to either of us, because it was just so Marvel of them to bring Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire together. So, like, seeing them, like, it wasn't, like, a surprise to me seeing it. It was more so, like, I can't believe this is actually happening. Because what other, like, movie, like, universe or, like, movie series is going to have that happen? Like, so much stuff had to align for that to come together. It's like, oh my gosh, like Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire with Tom Holland. And I saw it with my dad, and he didn't know about any of it because he's not on Twitter. So he was like, whoa, that's Andrew Garfield. I was like, yeah.
Yes, it is.
him.
I love that. I wish I didn't grow up watching the Spider-Man movies. Like, I knew who Andrew Garfield was and Tobey Maguire, but it didn't hit the same as it did for, like, everyone else. So I wish that I had grown up with that. Really?
I haven't seen the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
have.
Sorry,
I have
I'll watch
now.
them. I'll watch them, okay?
The second one's the best one.
Okay. Okay.
So I feel like Marvel has a lot of fun with their campaigns and their promotions, and they're just such a big brand, so they can have a lot of fun with it. So what's kind of your favorite campaign or anything that you've seen from Marvel?
I feel like my favorite, like, I'm not sure if you can necessarily call this a campaign, but when they capitalize on Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie having, like, the best, like, relationship, and just, like, their back and forth in the interviews, I love that. They definitely put them together every time after, like, I think it was, like, the Civil War Winter Soldier promo.
Winter Soldier yeah.
promo. They definitely put them together intentionally because they just, I don't know, their vibe was just so good. And, like, I still watch their interviews now.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're a Marvel fan, like, you can quote some of the, like,
Sebastian Stan, man, you're looking good. Man, oh man. Let me tell you something. I used to have a man who's handsome walking the street. He's gonna get arrested because he's killing all the ladies. Pow, 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 pow.
Guys, I don't know all the words.
Oh, I used to have a sticker
up.
on my laptop that was like all the.
And it's like a random interview that's from.
It's like a red carpet.
Yeah, it's like a red carpet.
He
Like,
like
it's so
walked up
funny.
and took over an interview. Like he literally took the mic from the interviewer and just started interviewing Sebastian Stan.
Exactly.
And then like their thing with Tom Holland's so funny too. Like the two of them making fun of Tom Holland. Like they
ask him for his juice box and stuff like that. Yeah.
It's so good. Well, they said that they originally put them together because, like, Sebastian was so quiet. So Anthony made him, like, not as quiet. But it also worked because their characters had so much, like funny energy, like, in the movies, too. Because they clearly, like, each wanted to be Cap's best friend. And it was, like... So I feel like it worked really well for them to also be like that in their interviews as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely... I feel like it informed how they built their relationship even in, like, the show, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and, like, the future movies. Like, seeing them kind of bounce off each other like that.
Kind of like going off of that, I think my favorite part of it is definitely the interviews in general. Like there's just so many iconic interview moments, and I think that a lot of the Marvel cast has such like unique and fun personalities that they have like, I can quote like so many of those interviews all the time. And like I sometimes on TikTok I even find myself like quizzing myself on them, like the finish the interview quote and stuff, because I've watched them so often, and they're just so fun. But I also think, I mean, obviously I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, so I've seen like almost every single Tom Holland interview, but the ones where Tom Holland is spoiling things, like in the past I was like, oh, he's so funny, he just spoils things all the time. But now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, they definitely did that on purpose. And so like the one of him like holding up the poster and it's like so exposes what the third Avengers movie's name is gonna be, or like the third or fourth, and then the entire like No Way Home promo of just like, you saw like, again, kind of like Andrew Garfield like leaks being on set in the Spider-Man suit and everyone thought it was fake. And then Andrew Garfield in interviews got asked, I think every single interview, oh, are you going to be in the next Spider-Man? He was like, no, like, I don't know what these people are talking about. And then he was. And it was just, those are probably my favorite. Just the interviews as a whole, I feel like.
Yeah, I do love the Tom spoiling things because it kind of like works with his personality because he was like the youngest one, a part of like the Avengers cast for so long, and so he was seen as like the little kid, just like not really thinking much about it, but like that also gave him such like his charm and his charisma, and he's so like, you see him as like kind of like sweet and adorable. So it worked really well for him, and I think that's really clever and funny.
I think what's cool that Marvel can do, because they have Disney backing them, like the Marvel, like the MCU, like Disney side of it, is that like they also get to use the theme parks as promo for their movies. So like Guardians of the Galaxy, like the Cosmic Rewind ride coming out, and now the movie's coming out.
Such a fun ride.
Such a great
I have
ride.
to say. So fun.
And they might not be related, but it's like good promo for that, you know, and then they can sell merchandise that has to do with the movies coming out in the park. So I feel like they have a lot with like the Disney brand like backing them. So, and like D23, like everyone gets really excited for D23 because it's like, what Marvel thing's gonna get announced when Kevin Feige comes on stage. I think interviews is what they do best, and like mixing people up with like different people for interviews, and just like Comic-Con in general, like San Diego Comic-Con, and having the panels. I think that is what works in Marvel's favor, is because you know these actors now because they've played these roles for 10 years, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what's best for them in terms of like campaigns.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of nostalgia behind Marvel too, because they have the comics, and the comics have been around for so long. So there's people in like the older generations who grew up with the comics, and so they grew up with those superheroes. And now the younger generations, like kids, like little babies even, they're growing up with Marvel as well through the movies and the shows. And so I feel like it's gonna be around for so long. I mean, they're making like so many movies and TV shows a year. Like there's already, I don't know how many there's been this year, but I mean, I know they have a lot lined up. And last year there were so many TV shows and movies coming out. So they're never slowing down. They always are producing content. And I know there's like a whole debate around whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, because some people, I mean, I enjoy it. I like a lot of content, but some people see that it's like, they're overproducing, but they're lacking on the quality of it because they're not taking as long on certain things. And I can definitely see that, specifically with some of the shows. I feel like they're kind of losing the quality on some of the shows, specifically in like the fight scenes and things like that. So that's like a whole other debate.
It's actually really interesting that you bring that up, because I think the reason a lot of people like Marvel is because it's interconnected, versus DC fans like it because you can watch a lot of standalone movies. And obviously we're all Marvel fans here, so is that true to you guys? Is that why you like the Marvel universe? Do you like DC movies at all?
I definitely feel like Marvel is more cohesive than DC. And I I know Spider-Man, there have been different iterations, and we have Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, but for the most part, since Iron Man started, it's just been a continuous, this is all stuff that's within the MCU. They've kept the same actors. So you've been able to see the storyline build over time. But with DC, I know they've had like a lot of changes throughout the time. Like right now, they're doing a complete overhaul of DC. So it's hard to get into it because, you know, so much is always constantly changing.
I feel like DC is a little darker too.
Yeah.
Just because, especially with the latest Batman, like I watched it and people raved over it with Robert Pattinson, but I was just kind of like, It was almost like too dark for me. At that point, it wasn't really like a superhero film. But yeah, kind of to what you were saying, I also feel like Marvel's something about it's a lot more like authentic and like genuine. And it could just be because Marvel was like first more in a way of like stylizing it like this, but often what I find with DC is I'm just like, they're just trying too hard to be Marvel, which could be very much like the DC fans could have the exact same reasoning, but something about the writing and the storyline and how everything's interconnected with Marvel, DC just doesn't really do that as well. And I also think Marvel kind of boils it up a little bit more. Like, we knew with the Avengers, it was the individual films, and then we started seeing it come together. And I feel like DC's like, here's the independent, and they're not really connecting it as much in the beginning, and if they do, it's too quick. Yeah. Like, they just don't really have the timing of it right, I feel like.
Yeah, I think it doesn't get thought out as much. I feel like Marvel like storyboards for like multiple different like phases, that's what they call it. Phases, and then you see them come together, and I feel like DC doesn't. Like you were saying, like I feel like they just like make a bunch of movies and they're like, oh, we should put them all in a movie together.
Yeah.
And I feel like DC, they have a hard task, like he kind of brought up. Marvel is kind of first, so everything's going to get compared to Marvel. Like, Marvel's impact on the film industry in general is so huge. Like, I watched 80 for Brady and I stayed behind for an end credit scene. You know, like, it's ridiculous. And so now DC has to find a way to have its own identity as a superhero, like, universe, and I don't think they've really found it yet.
Yeah, I feel like DC does do their villains pretty well, though. Yeah. Like, I love Joker.
DC's villains are better than Marvel's
DC villains are really good, but DC's heroes are... But also bringing up your point about, like, Marvel really plans ahead. Like, we had somebody at the agency who worked with Marvel, and she didn't tell me anything, but she said that she knows everything that happens for the next, like, 7 years.
Like, she can't say anything.
She can't say anything at all, but she knows. And that's, like, crazy that she knows that far ahead, and she interned for 1 summer, sort of thing. Like, so... I think that shows, like, how far ahead Marvel really plans. Marvel probably has the next 10 to 15 years planned out.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
And they kind of, like, call back, like, I think we all kind of mentioned that earlier, but, like, since they have everything planned out for so long, they can put little Easter eggs of, like, the upcoming things in their more recent projects, and I think that is always so fun, like we said about fans connecting theories and stuff like that. But also you brought up a good point about how DC, they recast a lot of their characters, and I think what's good for Marvel is that I feel like people have a stronger connection with the characters because it's the same actor or actress who plays them, and so I think, you know, it's just more natural that you're going to have a stronger bond with that character because it's a familiar face and, you know, maybe you like their acting style or personality, so I think that's definitely a strong suit for Marvel.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So we've seen the talks about misconceptions around just fans and different fandoms. It's just a common thing that occurs in most every fandom. I can imagine it occurs in the Marvel fandom. So what's kind of been your guys' experience with that misconception? Do you think it's harder being a female Marvel fan? I want to hear your input.
I feel like some people have the misconception, especially as a female Marvel fan, that you're there for the actors. You're like, oh, you know, I love Chris Evans, so I like Captain America. But really, I'm there for the storylines. I'm there for the arcs that they're building, the character development. It's really just because when I go to those movies, like, I feel like I'm really in that world, and that's what's been drawing me to those movies for the past, over like 10 years now. And it's not just about, like, oh, I like this actor, I think this actor is hot or something. It's so much more than that. And I also just feel like in terms of a misconception for Marvel fans in general, I think a lot of people think that if you're a Marvel fan, you can't really appreciate movies in a real or genuine way. But just because they're superhero movies, they're action heavy, doesn't mean that there aren't things that are critical for every movie that are drawing us into those films.
Yeah, I would kind of say the same thing. Like, it being a female Marvel fan, I've been pinpointed multiple times of, oh, you just like Spider-Man because Tom Holland's attractive. And, like, yeah, he is. But, like, there's no doubt about that. But funny how I can write a 2,000-word paper on why I like Spider-Man No Way Home, and it not once is mentioned that Tom Holland's attractive. Like, I've liked Spider-Man before Tom Holland. And when Tom Holland came in, it was just a plus that he was attractive. Like, that, I mean, that's the end of it. So, like, there's often the misconceptions of what Haley said. Like, you just like the actor. But then also what you said, something that I've experienced, because I'm more of an MCU fan rather than the comics. And I think a lot of there's kind of a divide between the people that read the comics and there's the people that watch the movies and like it for the MCU side of it. So I've definitely felt a little bit of, like, not tension, but just like, oh, I don't know as much as these people. And so there's often, like, you're not really a real Marvel fan if you didn't read the comics. And again, I say, well, then how come I can write a 2,000-word paper on why I like this movie? Like, things like that. So I think there's a big misconception there. Like, you don't have to read the comics to be a fan. Yeah. And especially, like, a superhero fan. But obviously it's a plus. And I think instead of making it a divide, I think making it a learning opportunity. I definitely have friends that did read the comics, and it's fun hearing their perspective of what they think could happen because they read the comics, and then I get more excited for watching the MCU, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I also think it's really funny, the attractive, like, you only like that person because they're attractive, because, like, yeah, duh, that's why they cast them. Do you know what I mean? Like, you think they're gonna cast an unattractive actor as a superhero? Like, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
But again, not why. I love Sebastian Stan, so therefore I like Bucky Barnes, but he's not my favorite superhero. Captain America is, and Spider-Man is, like I said earlier. So, like, yes, there's some of that there, but that doesn't mean I'm any less of a fan of the movies, or I can't talk about it, or that if I'm talking about it, like, I'm not trying to be a tryhard. I just genuinely enjoy the movies, which I think is the other side of it. Like, oh, if you are a female fan and you do really like it, you're just trying hard. You know, you don't actually care. You're just trying to get people to, like, you're trying to get boys to like you, basically, is, like, I feel like the flip of that.
That's so true. I also want to say, like, when people are like, oh, you just like them because they're attractive, Spider-Man literally wears a mask, like, most of the time. When you think about that, it's like, okay, like, put two and two together.
And to
like,
that I raise, you only like Black Widow because you think she's hot.
That's a good. That's
You know,
Have you seen the picture of Tom Holland, like, eating or drinking through his eye?
I think
You
I
think
have.
that's attractive?
Here.
Like, seriously, like,
Yeah.
exactly, like, he wears a mask. And exactly like you said, like, half the guys think Black Widow's hot because, or like Black Widow just because she's hot. Like,
And
that's
she
a whole
is,
other
but-
thing. That's a whole other thing that we don't need to get into. But
Yeah.
Black Widow's character and her, like, representation in the MCU, that's a whole other debate.
She was
Yeah.
definitely written by a man. That is for sure.
And they didn't give her the time of day. Like, it would have been great to have her movie earlier on.
Exactly.
Literally. Wasn't it supposed to come out earlier, though, because of COVID? But still, they
No, it
should
was
have
supposed to come out in theaters, and then they didn't. They only put it on streaming. And then they had other movies starting to come out in theaters after that.
I watched it in
Black
theaters.
I
Widow?
saw it in theaters.
Yeah.
But it was like at the same time. They did.
Oh, that's
yeah.
what it was.
Yeah.
They, like, put it on streaming at the same time instead of
Yeah.
getting it a theatrical release.
But I know, like, that was a big thing. People were like, I would have loved to have this Black Widow movie earlier
Yeah.
on, and, like, all these other people are getting their solo movies, whereas
Yeah.
Black Widow's, because she has a compelling storyline, but sometimes when you put her there, like, she's just a prop. It's
Right.
like, okay.
And I did like that movie because you could see her backstory and where she came from, and, like, how much of a hard worker and her passion for her family and everything is. And I mean, I saw that movie, like, way far after I had watched all the Avengers movies and everything, and so I didn't really think much about her character. I honestly kind of thought that she was just, like, a side character because that's how they wrote her. So if they had that movie before, like, her character would have been so much more powerful and just more likable, I think.
Yeah, they wrote her as a love interest for every single male
Yeah.
Avenger.
Yeah,
Like,
that was wild.
It was like, oh, there's
Hulk and Captain America,
and
yeah.
Hawkeye, who has a family. Like, you know what I mean? Like, every single male character, they're like, oh, Black Widow.
It was also a thing of, like, I think I've noticed, like, I've really liked all the female characters in Black Panther because
Yes.
they're
100%.
badasses. And I knew that, like, Black Widow was, like, a badass, but I don't think I related to it as much as, like, being a female, especially being a female Marvel fan, just because she was seen as such, like, the love interest from a male perspective, rather than, like, no, look at all this cool things. Look at all the cool things that she can do. Look at her cool backstory. Look at, like, how she's went through so much. And I, like you said, I wish we had that earlier so we could understand, and then you could even see, like, parts of yourself or relate to her character a little bit more.
I wanted to go back to your point about, like, people not seeing the movies, like, fans of the movies as, like, people that actually like film.
Yeah.
Because it's shocking to me how few Marvel movies or superhero movies in general have been nominated for Oscars, especially when you're talking about the creative people behind it. So we're talking about costumes, we're talking about, like, CGI, music, like, orchestration. Those are incredible movies, and they don't get seen as legit movies because they're superhero movies. So, like, Black Panther, as far as I know, is the only one that's really been nominated for anything, which so deserving of it. But it's, like, shocking to me that not even the actors. I'm like, do you guys know how difficult it is for them to, like, be playing these superhero characters? Like, they're not, like, they're having to act around this world that doesn't exist, you know?
Yeah.
So it shocks me that people don't take it seriously because I'm like, no, this is real. And then you're discrediting all the creatives that were behind it, that, like, made it a thing.
That's one of the biggest things. Whenever someone's downplaying a Marvel movie, you're also downplaying all the people who spent hours building that world and working on the visual effects and stuff like that from the creative side. But also just in general, like, Angela Bassett was, like, the first time that someone got nominated for Golden Globe or, like, Oscar for their performance in a Marvel
That's
movie.
insane.
And there are some other performances that I think are worthy of some level of accolade, like, of that level. and Angela Bassett not winning the Oscar. And I think part of that might have been because of, there were a lot of factors to it in my opinion, but I think part of that could be because there's sort of this weird way that other filmmakers look at Marvel movies. But when I watch Wakanda Forever and I watch Angela Bassett's performance, especially considering everything that was going on for her at that time, losing a beloved cast member and still delivering that powerful of a performance where I felt like that is a grieving mother. I don't know how you can take away from that performance just because it deals with superheroes. It feels so like pretentious in a way, and I feel like people are robbing themselves of the opportunity to appreciate something really amazing just because they want to feel like, oh, I'm superior because I don't like Marvel movies. It's one thing to not like it, but to put other people down for it and not recognize others' achievements for it, that's something else.
Yeah, I agreed.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. I mean, Angela Bassett's performance was so moving, and like you said, it felt like she was a grieving mother. Like, you felt her emotion, and that movie is just a masterpiece. I love that movie so much.
I often feel like it's a little bit of jealousy too, and I think I find this in like multiple fandoms, like where people just don't really take the time to try it and just see if they are gonna like it or not, and so they just instantly judge. And so when people start freaking out about Marvel movies and they just kind of scoff, they just don't get it because they've never tried and they just judge. And I think like my big was never a Marvel fan, and she texted me and she was like, I'm gonna try to watch all of it. I've never seen somebody get through something so fast. She went through the entire thing. She's caught up now, and she started earlier this year.
That's insane.
And
she loves it now. She gets it, and I think that's a perfect example of what people should do. I think people should if you're judging something, maybe take a step back and ask, why are people liking this so much? And when you do that and you take a second to learn, you might still not like it. It might not be your thing, but you're not going to judge as hard because you're going to be like, oh, that's just their thing. There's no reason to judge. There's no reason to hate on why people like fandoms or Marvel in general. It may be superheroes, but think about why we like those things.
Yeah.
Definitely a very great point. And I agree with that for all fandoms across the board. So I'm very glad you brought that up, Taryn.
Okay, one last rapid fire question. Favorite Marvel movie? Go.
Okay, I can't choose just one, so I'm going to say Civil War and Wakanda Forever. Yeah.
Currently, Spider-Man No Way Home was Avengers Infinity War. Before that, Captain America Civil War.
I think my number one is Civil War. If I'm going to go back and watch a movie, it's Civil War, but Wakanda Forever is definitely a close second. I was shocked at how much, it was it surpassed any expectation for that movie.
Yeah.
I also have to say a few because I'm really bad at choosing a number one favorite for literally anything. But Civil War, I have rewatched a few times on my own, and I didn't think that I would rewatch a movie like that. I've also rewatched, I really like Far From Home, and I feel like nobody likes Far From Home, but I really like it because it's them on vacation, and it's cute. It's a little coming of age movie. I also love No Way Home. But of course, I honestly have to say Wakanda Forever is my favorite. Maybe that's just because it's one of the more recent ones that I've seen, but I watched that twice in theaters because I just had to see it twice. I cried so much both times.
5 times?
I could cry right now if I thought about it hard enough, but it's so moving, and everyone's performance, you can just tell that there's so much emotion behind them. I literally could cry right now. I'm gonna start. Never mind. But because you know what they've been through, and it's just so heartbreaking, and it's oh my god, it's so real. I'm gonna cry.
No, please don't cry.
Taryn, Haley, thank you guys so much for coming on for the season finale of Fan Take and talking about Marvel. This was so much fun, and thank you so much for watching.
Honestly, guys, I don't want to go.
I know, Ginny, but remember, with great power comes great responsibility.